I was bullied so badly when I was a young kid that it changed my personality. And I'm yet to find anyone that I've met that was bullied as badly as me. Now, that's not to say that there's no one out there that was bullied as bad as me. I'm sure there was. It's just that I haven't met them. And in this video, I'm going to explain what the bullying was and how it changed the person I was. And the reason why I wanted to do this video was because two reasons. First reason, I saw a podcast with David Goggins, and he spoke about talking about the worst thing that ever happened to him. And this was his abuse from his father. And if he could talk about this in public, put it out there for so many people to see, then there's nothing anyone else could say to him that was going to affect him. And I thought that was really powerful. And the second thing is that I don't want to portray on this channel as being like this perfect guy who's got no issues, who's super confident and so on, which many people in this sort of self-improvement niche or manosphere niches, they kind of want to portray that. I'm a guy riddled with insecurities. I'm not super confident. I have my issues, I have my problems, and I have to try and deal with those insecurities. And I just don't want to give off that image like I'm this ideal, perfect guy and I've got it all figured out and so forth. And all those insecurities derive from a lot of this bullying and a couple of other things that I'll talk about. Now I want to take you on a little story about how this all started. And it goes back to when I was 7 years of age. Now up until that point, I was a super confident and outgoing and attention-seeking kid. I remember it. I was just full of confidence to the point that I couldn't understand shy people. I saw other kids that were shy and I just couldn't wrap my head around it. I didn't understand it. And so when I was 7, me and my family, my parents and my brother and sister, who were both younger than me, we moved from one end of the town we were living in, a little town in England called Dunstable, to the other end of town, now just outside the other end of town, to a little village. And the reason is because my dad anyway had to take a pay cut and he couldn't afford living in that initial place. And so we had to move somewhere cheaper, and this village was a little bit more on the rougher side, let's say. Anyway, after a few days of settling in, I'm this confident, outgoing kid. I want to make some friends, okay? Because I'd always had friends. I'd always made friends wherever I went. I was very popular at school. I was popular at any outside of school activities and so on. I just went up to people, introduced myself and made friends. So I searched the neighborhood and I found about a group, must have been about 20 kids of the local kids. Went up to myself, introduced myself, I'm the new kid, and had a really good night. Played football with them, got speaking to a lot of them. They all seemed pretty friendly and I had a really good time. And I came away really happy thinking, this is great. I've made friends here. I'm gonna really enjoy it at this place. Now another few days pass and I get a knock at the door and it's a bunch of these kids. And there's probably about 10 of them now. And they say, hey, Ryan, you coming out to play? So great, yeah, that's fantastic. I was beaming with joy. These kids who I'd met the other day, they came knocking for me. That was brilliant. So I got ready, put my shoes on, ran out the house with these kids, and didn't have a plan. They didn't say what they were going to get up to. They just said, come on, let's go and play. Now where we lived, you have to imagine that there was a lot of greenery. Okay, there's big fields and parks and farms, and there was always these bushes, lots of bushes around. And in many of these bushes, you could make a den. You could go inside, you could explore and have a good time. And we went up to one of these dens, and two of the older boys, they were a bit older than the rest of us. They probably at the time were about 11 and 12. And they said, hey, Ryan, go in that bush. We'll follow you in. I said, sure, no problem. I went inside, I'm in here, I'm all alone. No one followed me in. And I'm standing there, waiting for people to come in, and they're all deliberating amongst themselves, and I'm thinking, this is a bit weird. And my spidey senses start tickling. I'm thinking, what's going on here? The two older boys come in with a couple of other guys, and they just proceed to beat my ass. They start kicking me, punching me, grabbing sticks, whipping me with the sticks, throwing stones at me, and so on. And everyone started joining in. People would take it in turns, coming in the den because they couldn't all fit in at the same time, and proceeding to beat the crap out of me. I don't know how long this went on for. It felt like an hour or so. It maybe went on for 5 minutes. But I managed to escape. I managed to run out one of the other ends of the den and ran home. covered in scrapes and scratches and blood and tears. I was devastated, I was shocked, I was mortified and confused. Why did they do this to me? I didn't understand. Another few days pass, I get another knock at the door, and it's many of the same kids, and they asked me to come out and play. And I said, no, no chance. They said, look, we're sorry, you know, we will never do that again. I'm really, really sorry. We were just, you know, testing you, see how tough you are, and please come out and play. Me being this naive kid who always looked for the good in people, I believed them, and I just wanted to make friends, so I went for it. I went out. Well, obviously that was a mistake to accept the invitation, because they did the exact same thing to me. They threw me this time into one of the bushes and proceeded to beat me up again in the same way. They let me go this time, and I went home again absolutely devastated and shocked, but I learned my lesson. I realized, well, these kids are not my friends. So I told myself, if they ever come knocking again, I will never ever go out with them. And that was the case. And sometimes they would come knocking for me, and obviously I would say no, or I would just ignore them knocking. But being a kid, as the time went on, and the weeks and the months, and in the end it bled into years, I wanted to be outside. I wanted to play. I was an outdoor kid. I wanted to go out, play football, play tennis. I wanted to go on my bike and so on. And so I would do this. I would go out and play, and I had to play a game that I would play with these kids, that if I was out playing and I would see a bunch of these kids, because they were always in groups, they would always chase after me. So the moment they saw me, they would try and chase me, and they would try and get me. I was like an instinct to them. Oh, there's Ryan, go get him. Like, there was no thought to it. It was kind of surreal. And I would see them run away, and sometimes I got away and sometimes I didn't. And there were two major occasions that really stick out in my mind. And the first one of these occasions is, I had a friend around, and they managed to find me, and they grabbed me, and my friend ran back up to my house, but they kept me at the back of one of their gardens in the sheds. And they beat me, they whipped me. This time they got these leaves, these big leaves, and they piled in as much dirt from the garden and the soil they can, and they started spitting in it and snotting in it, and they forced me to eat it. And this was a lot of dirt. So whenever I refused, they would punch me, they would whip me, until I was forced to eat this stuff. Now, this stuff was disgusting. Imagine having a full belly of dirt and soil and people spit and bogies and all this shit. So that was pretty traumatic. That was horrible. And this continued, and many times it continued. They would get hold of me and grab me and do similar stuff like this. Many times they would throw stones and on a couple of occasions throw eggs at my window. They'd see me sitting in the window, or I would ignore their knock on the door, and they would throw stuff at the windows of the house and so on. But there was one occasion which was really horrific. They grabbed me, a group of them again, and they threw me in this shed again. There was a shed behind somebody's house that was surrounded by these bushes, and they threw me there on my own, and they continued to beat me and whoop me. And this time they forced me to strip naked. Now, there were a couple of girls that I went to school with, and I actually really fancied, that were part of this group now. And they're there standing at me, pointing and laughing, and having a great time at physically beating up this naked kid. And then the worst thing that happened, just when I thought it couldn't get any worse, any more humiliating, one of the bigger kids came in to this shed. I thought he was just going to beat me. But he pulled down his own pants and he proceeded to urinate all over me. I can't believe I just said that on camera, and I'm putting this out there to YouTube, to be honest. I've never told anyone that. I've never admitted that to anyone. The only people that know are me and those kids. And that's what he did. He urinated all over me. I'd never been so humiliated and mortified in my life. I thought it couldn't get any bad. I thought the bullying couldn't get any worse. But for some reason on that day, these guys decided to turn it up to 100. And so, yeah, I ran home naked. They didn't give me my clothes back. To run through the neighborhood naked. The neighbors must have been like, what the hell? Covered in blood and bruises and someone's urine. Now, whilst this was going on over a number of years, from the age of 7 up until roughly about 11, my parents, a year into this, got divorced. So I have to deal with this trauma of these kids bullying me, and then I have to deal with the trauma of my parents getting divorced. My dad left the house, and that was rough. That was a double whammy. Now, when you're a kid and you're a young kid, you sort of view the world in this almost narcissistic point of view that whatever happens, good or bad to you, is because of yourself. So this is the story I told myself, because it's not what happens to you, it's the story that you tell yourself, and that's so key. And the story I told myself was, well, I'm getting bullied by these kids, and my father's left the home, and my parents don't love me anymore. I need to change. Because obviously this isn't working out. Being myself, being this confident, outgoing kid is not working for me. I need to change. And looking back over the years, as the years went on, I regressed into my shell more and more. It wasn't like a dramatic overnight transformation, but I became less and less confident. I started to just keep my mouth shut more often, not attention seek anymore, doubted myself in certain social situations, was intimidated by other groups of peers around my age or maybe older, seeing older boys, and that would just instinctively trigger some anxiety in me. And it led to the point where I got to about 17 years of age, and I realized I actually got diagnosed with social phobia. Not self-diagnosed, a psychologist diagnosed me, and that was a tough realization as well, but it was the right realization. And the social phobia was never like too extreme. I've certainly heard of people who had it a lot worse than me. And it got up to the point where I couldn't really go to any social events without having a few drinks to calm me down and calm down my anxiety. And that got to the point where, I don't know, I was 24, 25, and I started to do some real deep work on myself. I started to understand myself, psychology, the world, and so on. And I really did some deep work on myself, and it's gotten a hell of a lot better, and I'm in a much better place and much more comfortable and confident in my own skin now. But it did change me. I am so anxious still in many social situations. I'm anxious, I'm not confident, I don't attention seek. I try to sit back and analyze and not make a scene or anything like that. And I often joke with my wife, you know, that if these traumas didn't happen to me, I'd probably grow up to be the most arrogant, obnoxious person on the planet. But sometimes I wish I was that, because at times that insecurities was crippling to me. That's the journey that I went on with my bullying, with my childhood bullying. And you know, it was bad. Like I said, I don't know if any of you went through similar, you know, levels of brutality with that bullying. I don't know, maybe you're worse. If you have, you get in touch with me, you know, maybe we can, if you need some help dealing with some of that stuff, I can help you with that, some of the psychological tools that I've used to overcome some of that. But I haven't let it hold me back. And I've always tried to improve and get worse. I didn't want to hide away and shy away to the point I could never leave the house. And I don't ever hold any resentment in my heart towards those kids. At the end of the day, they were kids, right? And I ended up being friends with some of them. As I got older, they stopped picking on me because I got bigger than them pretty quickly into teenagehood, and they wanted to become friends. And it was funny, yeah, I ended up hanging out with some of them in the end. And like I said, I had no resentment towards them anymore. Anyway, I did hate them initially, but it's something that happened in my life, and actually it's made me now, to this point, it's made me stronger, it's made me wiser, it's made me understand myself more, understand humans better and how you recover and deal with trauma, etc. So I see it in a way as a strength of mine now. And I hope that this can help some people out there. If you've gone through some similar things like this, you know, you're not the only one. And get in touch if you ever need the help, guys. So I hope this was helpful and you enjoyed it. Join me back for the next video.